Okay, folks, we're going to start the afternoon session. Thank you very much for getting back on time. I want to introduce now Jeannie Seifert. She's a Tea Partier from Georgia. She's been a Tea Partier since the beginning in the state of Georgia. She's now, I think, the state grassroots coordinator for Donald Trump, and she'll be introducing Senator Perdue. Jeannie.
Hello, Patriots. Georgia would like to say we love South Carolina. I am honored to introduce our freshman United States Senator, David Perdue. He is here for the same reason serving us as you are here. Our future is not very bright for our children. And so I wanted to introduce David Perdue. He is a businessman. He understands the debt. He is the outsider. I've never had any elected official communicate more. No matter how many times I text him, he always responds. If I call, he always answers. He is a listener. And I am honored to have him as our United States Senator. He really, truly, truly has our future, our children, and all the people of the United States of America's best heart at hand. I introduce to you United States Senator David Perdue.
Thank you, Jeannie. Thank you. Love you. Thank you. Thank you, Jeannie. I'm not running for anything today. So I'm going to tell it to you like it really is. I am honored to be here. I'm really humbled to be, the freshman senator from Georgia. I've never done anything like this. When I ran a couple years ago, I had never run for office. As a matter of fact, my perspective is your perspective. I'm a citizen. I got so, mad that I finally decided to do something about it. And my wife said, well, you could have just, done something else, but here we are. We ran for the Senate, and guess what? We got, because of some people in the audience, we won. I want to call out Jenny Beth Barton. I want to thank Jenny Beth for starting the Patriots in Georgia. And I want to really brag on Jeannie Seifert. Jeannie is a hard worker, grassroots person, but I tell you what, she has an insight that keeps me honest. And not just her, but many of you do the same thing, and I really appreciate that. My perspective is that of an outsider. My mom and dad were school teachers. I grew up on a farm in middle Georgia. I worked my way through college. I had a business career, 40 years. I ended up running a couple of large companies and being a Fortune 500 CEO. But my story's not unique. It's the American story. It's why I did this. I want to have that opportunity for your kids and my kids and our grandchildren. There's a story I like to tell that actually explains kind of how I got elected. And it talks about the mood today. And I think it really speaks to the presidential election today. There was a rally in McDonough, Georgia, just south of Atlanta, just before the primary. About 100 people in the back of a restaurant, very much like this. And I was nervous. I had a new speech. I was trying to explain why the debt is so bad, so insidious. And I was holding the door, and I'm nervous, and I'm holding the door. This little lady comes in. She looks like she might have been in her 80s. She had a cane, and she stopped. And she looked up at me and says, I know who you are. You're running for something. I said, yes, ma'am, I'm running for the Senate. She said, I just have one question of you. Have you ever been elected to anything? You ever done anything in Washington? I said, no, ma'am. She said, well, you got my vote. And she trundles on in. It didn't matter what I said. It didn't matter what I wore. It didn't matter what I looked like. That woman got it right. She knew Washington is broken, y'all. Broken. And I've been up there a year. It's perverse how broken it is. We can fix it. I'm very optimistic that we can fix it. But here's what we're up against. We're up against a political class. 60 United States senators have been in elected office up there of one form or another for more than 20 years. 60 out of the 100. 36 even more. You didn't know that, right? 36 U.S. senators have been in elected office up there of one form or another for more than 30 years. There's our problem. We've got to change that. We have a full-blown crisis. It's why I'm here. It's what I'm doing around the country, is calling out this crisis. It's my mission in life. And to talk about some of the solutions, to get these presidential candidates talking about it. We have the high ground here, and here it is. In the last 100 years, we've had 3 Democratic supermajorities, not one Republican in the last 100 years. The first gave us the New Deal. The second gave us the Great Society. The third gave us, Dodd-Frank and Obamacare. And I can put at the feet of those three supermajorities most of the responsibility for this financial catastrophe we have today. And yet here's the irony. The irony is that those sweeping, progressive, liberal programs have failed the very people the Democrats claim to champion, the working men and women of America. Today, we have fewer people where I don't have to tell you, that's why you're here. But I need to hear these presidential candidates screaming about the failed Democratic mantra. The fact that I hear Hillary Clinton talk about working people, she doesn't know any working people. I am a working person. My brother is, my sister is, my wife was. I'm mad about this because we've given them the high ground. I want to take it back. We do it this year. We have fewer people working right now in the United States as a percentage at any time since 1978. Middle-class incomes are down. Middle-class net worths are down dramatically under this president. Worst of all, in the last 6 years alone, 4 million women have fallen into poverty, y'all. 4 million women. Today, the poverty rate, this is the irony. They don't want to talk about this. The poverty rate, just last week, last Saturday, in South Carolina, you had a poverty conference. Paul Ryan and Tim Scott are doing a great amount of work there. But poverty today, I like it. Poverty rate today is exactly the same as it was when the Great Society, the war on poverty, was signed into law in the mid-60s. It's failed. Trillions of dollars we've wasted and have not done anything to ameliorate poverty. We've got a problem. The fight today, though, is not just about, it still is liberalism, progressivism against conservatism. It really is. But it's more than that, y'all. Here's what it's also about. It's also about, it's moved to another axis. It's moved to big government and individual liberty. It's moved to the political class and the American people. It's why I ran. I could see that. Today, I characterize this crisis in 3 ways. First, we have a constitutional crisis. This president has trampled our beloved Constitution. Through executive order and regulatory mandate, he has figured out how to run our country and set the tone and direction for the next 50 years without Congress. Somebody said the other day, well, David, which one of these regulators would you go after? I said, it doesn't matter. Pick any acronym in Washington to go after. NLRB, EPA, IRS, it doesn't matter. Go after one. We've got to change that. They're sucking the very life out of our economy. The second crisis we have is this global security crisis. We just see now where ISIS can actually extend their power into our country. We have this global security crisis that has to be dealt with today. I see it on 3 levels. We have the rise, again, of traditional rivals. China and Russia are getting ever more aggressive every week. Second, we have the rise of ISIS from our own intransigence when this president prematurely withdrew our troops out of Iraq and created a vacuum into which grew ISIS. We've got to deal with them now over there once and for all, or we'll have to ultimately deal with them over here. The third way I look at this global security crisis is this. This president was bound and determined, and he got it. But we have a nuclear proliferation problem that we haven't had since the 1960s. And here's the problem. It's with rogue countries. North Korea, Iran are both headed in a hell-bent direction to get nuclear power, and we've got to stop that. The problem is we don't have a strong foreign policy. We don't have a strategy. This president has told, we're going to lead from behind. How many of you have ever been in any organization that worked by leading leadership from behind? That's not what leadership is. Ask the military. Some of you are veterans. You know leadership from behind doesn't work. But here's the problem. We don't have a strong foreign. To have a strong foreign policy, you have to have a strong military. Folks, we're about to have the smallest army since World War II, the smallest Navy since World War I, and the smallest Air Force ever. How in the world did we get here? This president single-handedly has put us in a point where, honestly, the ability to protect ourselves is in jeopardy. That's how serious this is. Now, interwoven with that global security crisis and constitutional crisis is the debt crisis. It's what pulled me in here. I see it in spades now. Not only is it the $19 trillion of debt, we have over $100 trillion of future unfunded liabilities, primarily in Social Security and Medicare. Folks, that's $1 million for every family in America. That's not just you. That's your children and their children. People said, well, you know, this crisis, well, you know, we're handing it to our kids and grandkids. No, we're not. It's right here, right now. We are so far past the tipping point. And this is my message. We've got to act now. We can't wait until 2017 to have a new president. We have to begin acting now. And here's why. Remember the quarter-point interest rate that the Fed just did a few weeks ago in December. You know, that's $50 billion of new interest every single year. $500 billion of new interest over the next 10 years. Imagine what we could do in curing cancer or in defending our country or protecting our men and women in uniform. Imagine. Imagine if the interest rates were to just go back to their 30-year average of 5.5%. We would be paying $1 trillion in interest. That's twice what we spend on our military. It can't happen. It won't happen. It's not manageable. Worse than that even, this administration has done nothing to save Social Security and Medicare. Both trust funds go to zero in 15 years. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no amount of tax that you could collect from the American people that can pay the full responsibility of Social Security and Medicare on top of all the other discretionary spending that we need to do in the next 10 years. It can't happen. The problem is that we've got to get serious. We've got to develop a sense of urgency. And I'm here to tell you that the first week I was there, I ran into the stone wall of the political class. And here's how I did it. The first week I was in office last year, sworn in on Tuesday. On Thursday, I submitted 3 bills. And I saw the full force of the political class. I put a budget in, and I'm going to continue to fight for these, to get them to the floor, to get a real debate and have a vote. I put a balanced budget amendment in as a bill. That's the first thing I did. The second thing is I argued we've got to change the way we fund our federal government. Now, I happen to be a proponent of the fair tax. I understand that there are various potential proposals, but I have to tell you, we've got to start an active and honest and open debate about how to change how we fund our federal government and take the power away from Washington and give it back to us. And that's what fair tax would do. The third thing I put in up there, and this is maybe the most important, I put a bill that would put term limits on the United States Senate and the United States House of Representatives. And I'm going to keep fighting until I finally get that. It's the number one reason that we have a political class. We've got to fix that. I'm sort of the tip of the iceberg here. Here's a guy that never ran for anything. I didn't know how to spell politics until I got in this mess. And I'm telling you, we need more of you to do the same thing. We have got to change the political class makeup in Washington. But there are other things we've got to do. We've got to fix the budget process. We've got to cut out these redundant agencies. And yes, we have to once and for all save Social Security. And we can do that without affecting any benefits of current recipients. We just have to get started on it. Every year we wait makes it harder and harder and harder to do that. As you can probably tell, I'm not really comfortable with where we're headed as a country. I don't have a peace. It's what pulled me in here. And with no disrespect to any religion or faith, the Christian Bible says, be anxious for nothing, but through prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, shall guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Ladies and gentlemen, we're called to pray right now. We are in a moment of crisis. I want to pick a person in the Republican primary system that can beat Hillary Rodham Clinton, and we've got to do that in the next few months. But collectively, I don't care who the final candidate is. We have got to make sure that our candidate wins this year. We cannot have another 2012. We cannot have another 2008. This is the year. Honestly, I don't know that our republic can withstand another 4 years of going in this direction. And believe me, Hillary Rodham Clinton will double down on these liberal progressive policies. She doesn't know anything else. We've got to make sure that Hillary Rodham Clinton has not one more night in our White House. You know, my wife and I are at the stage in life where we're beginning to have grandchildren. It almost makes having children worthwhile, you know. So we got these little guys, and we've got 2 at 4 and 1 at 2, and the 4-year-olds have learned to FaceTime, and they love to do that. And these little guys have figured out they can pretty much call me anytime, day or night, and I'm going to pick the phone up, right? And so couple weeks ago, I picked the phone up, and here's this little guy, and they call me D2. I'm a junior. They call me D2. They said, D2, I love you. Now, guys, I got to tell you, they reach in there and just grab your heart. They know what they're doing, too, by the way. But you know, it really served to remind me why I'm doing this, why you're doing this. You and I don't want to be a member of the first generation in American history that has to tell them, my children, your children, our grandchildren, that we're leaving them a world that's worse off than the one that my mom and dad, members of the great generation, left us. It's a travesty. There's no reason with our blessings where we are today. I can imagine how the supreme being, God, looks at us and just shakes his head, how we let ourselves get here. But we can fix this. Ronald Reagan said freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We don't pass it down in the bloodstream. It has to be fought for, protected, and passed on so they can do the same. Or one day, in our sunset years, we'll be telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in America when women and men were free. Not on my watch, thank you. Not on your watch. It doesn't have to happen. It's not going to happen. Together, we can take our country back. Together, we can bring back the principles that we've talked about. Together, we can create a new beginning for our children and our children's children. God bless you for what you do. Thank you for being here. God bless the United States of America. Thank you.